All right, so it's good to see everyone here. Unfortunately, as I put in my text, today's class is in loving memory of Adam Pluchak, Avram Yaakov ben Moshe Levi, who tragically passed away. He didn't show up to last week's Tanya Tuesday. I was kind of surprised and found out a couple hours later that he had actually passed, and that's why he wasn't there. So we're going to study this in his merit and memory. And of course, the topic today fits very much with him. Many people at his funeral spoke about how he didn't have a bad bone in his body. You never hear a bad word out of his mouth. No hatred, no enmity ever. He just always loved people. You always saw him here with that smile. But apparently it wasn't just in my circle. You know, some people, you never really know what people are like in other circles, but never, had any bad things to say about anybody. Never in my conversations with him, but apparently conversations with others. And so I think it's insightful that we're going to be studying the rest of this chapter today in his memory. And the chapter today is a continuation of what we did last time, chapter 32, which is, as I said, is the 32nd chapter of Tanya. 32nd chapter of Tanya in Hebrew. The numerical value of 32 is Lamed Beis, which spells the word Lev, heart. It is the heart of the Tanya. And so it's the heart and the love, and it's the heart of the Chabad philosophy. So what most people know, Chabad, when people think of Chabad, aside from Chabad being everywhere, is people know Chabad as being non-judgmental, loving, Chabad being just loving every Jew. And that love that Chabad displays is something that has captured many people, knowing that they can walk into a Chabad house and not be judged. But as I always say, Chabad is both a movement and a philosophy. And so we are studying the philosophy, and once you continue studying the philosophy about Chabad's love, you will appreciate it even more. So again, we studied some of the philosophy of Chabad's love last time. Now we're going to continue it. So last week, we mostly discussed the case to love. We made the case, the philosophical case, why you should love every person and even more every Jew. You should love every person because we understand that the body is not the main thing in life, and it's the soul. And so in Judaism, the entire Judaism is always to focus on the soul and not the body. That's why on Saturday, I'm going to go to synagogue and not go to clean my car. That's why on Passover, I'm not going to eat bread, I'm going to eat matzah. Every single Jewish practice, or many of them, we have to place our soul in front of our body. So Judaism is all about putting our soul in front of our body. And that is why the great Rabbi Hillel said that the basis of the Torah is to love your fellow as yourself. Why? In order to truly love someone, what separates us from other people is the bodies, the character that's added to us in this world. But the soul is beautiful, the soul is pure. And so if we truly are followers of Judaism, the ultimate expression of that is that we can love someone else. The hardest thing, as you may know, is getting along with people, especially people that may be annoying. And it's very hard to look at someone that annoys you and love them. But if we practice Judaism to the full extent in which we place our soul in front of our body, then at that point, we have the ability to love someone else. I'll get through this. Every Jew have a pure soul. That's actually today's class. So with that being said, we said, number one, with this, I can love every person, even somebody who's not a Jew, because I understand that what's most important is their soul. That person, even if they don't have a Jewish soul, they are created by God. And by virtue of that soul, I should love them and understand that every single person has a mission here on this earth. And I brought some story to back up this idea, but I don't remember right now. But the point is that as long as we can look past the body, we have the ability to love other people. Then we added there's another layer when it comes to Jewish people, because though everybody has a soul given to them by God, the Jewish soul is unique, as we explained in Tanya chapter 7, Tanya chapter 2, that the Jewish soul is literally a piece of God. When we say the word literally, we mean obviously everybody comes from God, but it means literally it is at its essence, the essence of a Jewish soul. At its core, that Pinta Yid, that inner Jew, is in its essence a pure, unadulterated piece of God. And therefore, I cannot hate another Jew. It's not possible. Why? Because that other Jew is actually a part of me, and I am part of them. If my soul is a part of God and their soul is a part of God, we are truly one. So just as I would never slap myself, right? I would not take my own hand to slap myself. How can I hate another person? So to answer Nina's question, is every single Jewish soul pure? The answer is yes. Are there exceptions? That's what today's class is going to be about. So this is where, that's where we're going to pick up today. And we also said one more thing last week. We said that you should know that loving your fellow Jew as yourself creates a vessel in which God wants to give us blessings. God does, just as in order to, a blessing is like, I always say, a blessing is like God is giving us something. So let's say I'm pouring you orange juice. You need to have a cup to hold the orange juice. If your cup is broken, the orange juice is going to spill everywhere. So if God wants to give his Jewish people a blessing, he wants to give you a blessing, he needs a vessel that is whole. When there is disunity, when there's fighting, the vessel is broken, and therefore the blessings that God gives us spills out. And that is why it says that Barchinu Avinu Klanu Kechad, God will bless us when we are unified. But now we're going to pick up today, and it's instructive that Nina asked this question. She said, is every Jewish person's soul pure? So we're going to go into the question of, is it really true that we can love every Jew? Aren't there exceptions? Don't, if you read the Torah or the Talmud or anything else, aren't you going to find some precedent for hating other people? Just to give an example, an unfortunate example, but there are some religious Jews in Israel who, if you drive through their neighborhood on Shabbat, they will throw rocks at you. If you come into their neighborhood during the week dressed immodestly, they might also throw rocks at you. To the point that even my wife, Mushki, says that, though of course she always dresses modestly, I think she one time went to this, went to the neighborhood, this neighborhood, and though she was dressed modestly, not according to the standards of that neighborhood, and they started heckling her and her friends. So, where are they getting this from? Is there any source in Judaism? And what does Chabad say about it? And how does Chabad truly seem to love every Jew? Are we choosing to ignore parts of Judaism because it doesn't fit with what we generally like? Are we trying to just be nice so we could be more successful at bringing people closer to Judaism? Or do we have another perspective on these statements? And the answer is, as you may understand, we have another perspective on these statements. Chabad, we are very, very religious. We follow all the laws of the Torah, and we don't ignore any part of the Torah, but it's a matter of how you understand and appreciate, and understand these sections of the Torah. And that is what today's discussion is going to be about. That Alter Rebbe is going to give us the philosophical, I always say Chabad is right, Chabad is a philosophy and a movement. You're going to understand how philosophically Chabad can love Jews that seem so far from Judaism, despite some statements in the Talmud or Torah or elsewhere. So let us first start with the more simple case. Can you love a robber? Can you love someone who rips people off? Can you love a Bernie Madoff? Just to give an example, I know there was a Chabad rabbi who would visit the prisons up, I think, in New Jersey. I think that's where Bernie Madoff was in prison. And when it became known that he was visiting Bernie Madoff, people got very upset at him. How can you, this guy, despicable Jew, how can you go visit him? How can you do anything for him? He's swindled so many people, ruined so many lives, caused people to even take their lives, in fact. How can you go visit them? And that's the perspective we can appreciate. And if you're a quote-unquote Jew in these cities, the other question in Israel, they'll ask the question, how can you love another Jew that desecrates the Shabbat? That's what they would say. So same question that we would ask, how can you love a Jew who robs and steals? They'll ask, and how can you love a Jew who desecrates the Shabbat or eats pig on Yom Kippur or whatever? So what do you say? Any thoughts? How can you love a Bernie Madoff?
I love every Jew.
Okay. I'm not asking what you do. I'm asking how can you love Bernie Madoff?
Because I cannot judge. I'm not allowed to judge any Jew. That's what the Torah tells me.
Okay. Dr. Yannick, what do you say?
Well, I think it goes back to things that we learned earlier, was that, you may have difficulty doing things, and there's still that spark in you that allows you to, at least do something good, try to do something good. And as long as you're trying to do that and elevate yourself, you still have the potential to elevate your soul and to be a good person. And I think that's maybe where we have to look at this. I mean,
Very
not
good. Yeah. So if I understand, you're going back to chapter, I think it was 30 or 31, and I think Nina was alluding to that too. The idea that I may struggle in some area, and maybe what's his name, Bernie Madoff struggles in stealing, right? Who says in my failures that his desire to steal
right.
isn't right? So who am I to judge him and say he's worse than me, right?
But there are failures that are a lot worse than others, like that you can't even compare them. Like what that guy did, he was playing with the livelihood of a lot of people. That's horrible. We do make mistake, but we do make that type of mistake. Can we
Listen,
compare?
I'll tell you even worse. I go to prison, and sometimes I visit murderers. Should I not include them for a minyan? Should I not put on tefillin with them? Should I
No.
say,
Well,
sorry,
they're not irredeemable. People are hopefully redeemable, and I think you need to look at that too. Is that there's only maybe one or two people that I can think of that are totally irredeemable.
Right, that's the key point. Everybody is redeemable, and that's part of Hasidic philosophy, I believe, Rabbi. And I think that words matter in Chabad philosophy. I think the word is like fool, folly, or like temporary insanity. Every Jew can repent and has goodness in their soul. And when they make mistakes or do bad things or not great things, it's just folly. It's
not really them. It's a folly, a spirit of folly.
Right. So I think the Hasidic philosophy is, like the gentleman said, everybody has an opportunity to repent, even the worst murderer, and we should try to assist that until the day they die.
Okay, good. All right. I like all the perspectives. Very, very good, everybody. I want to now continue with the Tanya, where he's going to discuss some specific statements where it says we have to hate people and how we deal with that and how we can still nevertheless love other people. So the first one is, it says, the Talmud says, and, let's actually take a look. We can actually look at the Talmud. And I'm looking at the wrong screen here. Okay, let's take a look at the Talmud. All right, so I'm just going to read the first line. So he says, does it apply to everybody? While the Torah warns in general against harboring hatred for another, do not hate your brother in your heart, the rabbis taught that it is obligatory to show contempt towards a sinful person. And again, this is probably the source of those people who throw rocks at other people. And as for the Talmud's teaching that if you witness your friend sinning, it is a mitzvah, and in English, he wrote to show contempt for him, but it actually says to hate. It says it's a mitzvah to hate him. And you should also inform his teacher so he can show hate to him as well. Okay? So again, if you want to do a simple reading of the Talmud, it says that if you see your friend sinning, not only should you hate him, but spread the news. Hey, everybody, see what he did? Gotta hate him. Guess what I saw last night? Hey, everybody gotta hate him. So many people may do a cursory reading of this Talmud and feel justified in their hatred of others. So the Alter Rebbe says, not so fast. You have to study the law in order to know when it applies. And so he says, number one, he says the mitzvah to hate. He says, first of all, it says, and I'll show you. he says, first of all, you need to know that it says the word over here, if you see your friend. So the word friend is very instructive. The commentaries explain that friend means that this person is at your level of Torah study. They're not, you can't just hate anybody that is doing something wrong. Rule number one, qualification number one for this hatred, it has to apply to someone who is literally your friend. And it doesn't mean friend like you get along with them. It means they're your friend at your level of Torah study. Okay, so let's read that inside. So he says, so let's read the first one. He says, because the Talmud's ruling applies not to any person, but specifically to your associate, i.e., your equal in full Torah and mitzvah observance. All right, so far, we already have a reason not to hate most people, okay? So you can only hate someone, right? So these people in Israel that are throwing the rocks, 95% of the people that they're throwing the rocks at, probably more than that, 99.9% of the people are not at their level of Torah study and mitzvah observance. So automatically, boom, they should not be hating those people. All right, that's number one. Number two, it says you can't hate someone until you give someone a chance. You can't just catch someone doing something wrong and then decide to hate them. It's like David mentioned. Maybe they had a spirit of folly. They had a moment of weakness. You got to point out to them, say, hey, maybe you didn't realize, but you know, you're doing something wrong here. Maybe you want to fix it up.
Can I add something, Rabbi?
Yeah.
So you remember Pinchas? He killed Zimri and what was his name, Cosby, because he found them doing immorality, and he didn't give them the chance. He just killed them.
Good question. All right. So there are, that's because that's the rule in the Torah. Just as the rule in the Torah is certain acts, you are allowed to kill the person. But even then, Pinchas was only allowed to kill him during the act, not when it was done. Only during the act would he be justified in killing them. Okay? Even then, it may not be he hates them. Hating has nothing to do with the law is the law. The same thing is any capital punishment in the Torah doesn't mean that you hate the person that you're administering the capital punishment, right? It just means this is the law, this is God's law, and this is what we do. Hatred is a different thing. Okay, we'll touch on that more a little bit later as well. Some proofs from that. Okay, so, but it's a good question. So here it says, it also only applies to an associate towards whom you have already fulfilled the mitzvah. You must repeatedly rebuke your fellow. So again, number one, they have to be your level of Torah study and mitzvah observance. Number two, you have to first tell them. And when it says rebuke them, it doesn't mean in public. That's another thing people have to understand. There are rules around rebuking. When you need to tell someone off, you have to do the most effective way. You can't say, I have a mitzvah to rebuke. Let me tell you what you're doing wrong. No, rebuking has to be done in private. You do it in public, it's not effective. There's no point. There's no point to do it in public.
It's also Lashon Hara if you do it in public.
Well, it's not Lashon Hara because if people see the person doing it, it's not Lashon Hara, right? I mean, unless you're telling them something they did before, right? That's a good point. If you're telling them something they did before, yes, it's Lashon Hara. But something they're doing currently.
No, before, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I misunderstood. Yeah, it can be Lashon Hara depending on the scenario. But again, anytime you're going to call someone out in public, it's not helpful. So there are rules around rebuking. So what it means here is you saw someone do something, you spoke to him privately about it, and he did it again, and that person is at your level of Torah study. And now he's going to bring one final qualification, okay? So not only does this person have to be at your level of study, not only this person, you have to first explain to them what they're doing wrong. He adds, again, all based on the halachic codifiers. And this mitzvah of rebuking your fellow applies exclusively to someone who is like you in Torah mitzvos. Oh, sorry. And nevertheless, despite your attempts to respectfully correct his behavior, the person does not cease this practice, as it says in Sefer Haredim cited above. Other commentaries of the Tanya actually say this third line, because it seems to be repetitious. I don't know how he's translating it, right? He first says he has to be your associate in Torah mitzvah. So then it says someone who's like you in Torah mitzvah. So actually, some people explain, I don't know why in this commentary he seems to make them say the same thing, because then it's just being repetitious. But other commentaries explain that he has to be your friend. Okay, he has to be someone that you're close to. You rebuke a random person doesn't mean anything, right? So if you don't know me for Adam and I come over to you and I explain to you what you're doing wrong, you're probably not going to listen. You don't know me. You don't know that I have your best interest in mind. So many commentators explain that as a third qualification. Not only do they have to be at your level, not only do you have to tell them off in private, but you actually have to know them. You have to be friends with them, have some type of relationship with them. So with all that being said, now that we've qualified this statement that you have to hate someone who's doing something wrong, how many people can you honestly think that it applies to?
Everybody.
Huh?
Everybody.
That you should hate?
There could be an element, a moment of hatred. That's okay.
No. Again, the Torah. We're asking from the Torah, not asking how we feel. I'm saying, does the Torah command us to hate? Right. That's how we started off. The Talmud said you have to hate someone who does something wrong. Not only you hate him, but you also have to tell your teacher. So we've now qualified. You can only hate them if they're at your level of Torah study and mitzvos. If they're your friend and you've rebuked them privately, how many people do you know that you can truly hate based on this dictum of the Talmud?
I wouldn't.
Not many, and I also think it'd be hypocritical at some point because, I'm not at hardly anyone's level of Torah and mitzvos, so it would be seemingly hypocritical for me to hate someone when I'm not doing it myself or something like that.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. You can't say, well, we both don't keep Shabbos, but I told you to keep Shabbos, and now I can hate you.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No,
It doesn't make
work.
sense that you would hate that kind of.
No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Lyle, I guess, has the funniest line here. The only person, I guess, would be yourself, right? But that's for another time. Of course, don't hate yourself. Okay. So, with this idea, all right. So with this in mind, so considering that there's almost nobody that we can put in this category, right? Almost nobody. I say almost nobody. I have a few people who I hate as a part of my importance as a rabbi and some of my good friends, right? No, I'm kidding. But you can almost hate nobody. With this, we can understand. So what should we do instead? What should we do instead? It says, but in the case of a person who is not your associate, and so he's now going to prove his point, by the way. He's going to show that not only should you not hate these people, but you're supposed to love them. He's going to prove his point. He says, but in the case of a person who's not your associate and lacks the real knowledge and education necessary for the intentional sin, and is not close to you, and is therefore unlikely to accept your rebuke, there is no room at all for contempt, only love. In such a, next page, in such a, page 366, I think it is. In such a case, Hillel the elder taught, be of the disciples of Aaron, love peace and pursue peace, love all creatures and bring them close to Torah. It says about Aaron the high priest that he loved and pursued peace, and he would love all creatures and bring them close to Torah. So Aaron, surely there were many Jews in the desert who sinned, right? In fact, we know of many of the sins. And nevertheless, Aaron would look at all these people and he would love them and he would bring them closer to the Torah. So Aaron did not display any hatred. And if we were to go with the theory that some of the other people go with, you see someone doing something wrong, then you can hate them. How could Aaron love all these people? He had good reason to hate them. But now we understand. Nobody, except for Moses, was at Aaron's level. Nobody was at Aaron's level. So he had no reason to hate anybody. There was nobody he could hate. But now I want to focus on another line that it says over there about Aaron. It says that Aaron, he loved, what was the line over there? He loved the creatures. So the sages say, what does it mean? He loves all creatures. Well, I mean, would you like it if someone called you a creature? So the answer is, as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain in a second, he says, using the word creatures is actually very instructive. The point is that even if the only redeeming value of the person he loved was the fact that they were created by God, even such a person he loved. So so they weren't even, so to speak, worthy of the title of person. They were so wicked, if you want to put it that way, right? They always gave in to their animal soul. They were like animals. But even animals are a creation of God. By virtue of that, we should love every animal, every creature. And surely we should love every human being. So that's what we were saying. Aaron loved everybody, even somebody who was at the level of a creature. Even someone who the only reason to love them is by virtue of their inner godly soul and created by God. So let's read that. Meaning that even those who are distant from God's Torah and worship, which is why they are referred to here as mere creatures, having no merits of their own beyond the fact that they were created by God, nevertheless, you must draw them in with thick cords of love, as that's quoting from the prophet Hosea. So we need to love every single Jew and love them in ways that, regardless of how they act, there's almost nobody on the planet that you can truly be sanctioned to hate according to the Torah. And therefore, we have to love them. And now comes the next question. Are we only loving the person because we might bring them closer to the Torah? Or do we have to love them regardless? In other words, this that we say that Aaron loved everybody, right? It says, Aaron, ohevet abriot, let's look at the line again, right? It says that, be of the disciples of Aaron, love and pursue peace, love all creatures, and bring them closer to the Torah. So the question is, are those two things dependent? Do we only love people because we can bring them closer to the Torah? And let's ask a Chabadnik, right? Chabad is known for non-judgmental and loving every Jew. Does Chabad only display love because it's kind of a trick so we can get people to do more mitzvahs?
No.
No? Why do you say that?
That's the goal. The goal is, but you prefer modeling because you're smart.
But let's say I've been working on someone, I've been loving them, and they're not getting anywhere. Should I at some point give up and stop loving them?
Of course not. You never gave up on me.
Well, now maybe I should think about it, right? No, I'm kidding.
Maybe.
So we're going to read, and this is going to really explain to you Chabad's model, because there are many, many groups out there that work on outreach today, and I don't know that many of them have this deep level of love for every single Jew, just because, again, I say Chabad is a philosophy and a movement, and to many of them, it's seen as a means to an end. It's not bad, it's better than hating Jews who are not religious, but in Chabad, it's much more than just a means to an end, as we're about to read. And again, that's why this chapter is so important. It's the philosophy behind the movement. So let's read this over here. And he says, and then perhaps with all of this effort, with the effort of loving another person, even someone who's just a creature, the only reason to love them is the fact that we're created by God. And he says, perhaps with all this effort, you will be able to bring them closer to Torah and worship of God. Above the Tanya stress that love for another ought to be unconditional due to all souls' equal root in the source of living of God. Yet here the text stresses that there is a goal in extending love to non-observant Jews. Perhaps with all this effort, you will be able to bring them closer to Torah and worship of God. So here's the question. Is there a goal to loving your fellow, or is the love to be extended unconditionally? No, is there a goal, or is it unconditionally? The answer is that both are true. Jewish identity is multi-layered. So the mitzvah to love your fellow is likewise multi-layered. At the level of essence, a Jew is connected to God regardless of his or her level of observance. However, the manifest reality in the world as God created it is that a connection to God comes through Torah mitzvos. Let's go to the next page. Above, when the Tanya taught that love should be extended unconditionally due to every soul's root and source in the living God, we were speaking of love towards a Jew's essence. But here in stressing that perhaps with all this effort you will be able to bring them closer to the Torah worship of God, the Tanya speaks of the manifest reality where a Jew's connection to God must be through Torah. Practically speaking, we need to incorporate both attitudes, to love each Jew's essence by virtue of their soul, but this must also lead to their manifest connection with God through Torah observance. And here is the most important line of the Tanya, just to say this is not a commentary. The Alter Rebbe holds to this himself, and he says, and if not, if you didn't succeed in bringing the person closer to Torah and worship of God, you still did not lose the reward for observing the mitzvah of loving your fellow, which is carried out unconditionally. So the Alter Rebbe says, though we want, and we desire, that when we love a fellow Jew, we'll bring them closer to Torah, but even if we do not accomplish that, even if they never get closer to Torah, you still don't lose the mitzvah of loving your fellow. 100% you fulfilled that mitzvah. The mitzvah is not conditional on bringing someone closer to God. And I want to add one more line here. The Rebbe would add that if loving another person means taking care of them physically, giving them food, giving them nourishment, giving them a home, giving them clothing, then surely the same applies spiritually. In other words, my trying to bring someone closer to God, my trying to bring someone closer to Torah mitzvah is actually an expression of my love for them. I love you so much that I would love for you to do a mitzvah because I know how good it would be for you. I want you to study Torah. I want you to show up for the holidays. I want you to put on tefillin, to light Shabbat candles, is actually an expression of my love to you. But even if you don't light those candles, I still love you. I love you for your essence. But I also understand that on this world, revealed connection to God comes through Torah mitzvahs, and therefore, for your benefit, I want you to do a mitzvah. For your benefit, I want you to study Torah. It's not my benefit, it's for your benefit. It's part of my unconditional love to someone, being as that person is a part of me. So I think you now understand the Chabad philosophy and the movement. There are many groups of Jews. Maybe you've heard of these. If someone becomes not religious, they sit shiva for them. Or in some groups of Jews, they will call a Jew who's not religious a goy. They'll call them a Gentile. They'll even consider that all their mitzvahs are worth nothing. And here the Rebbe clearly quotes, we have from Aaron. Aaron clearly was dealing with people who were not fully committed to doing everything right, to the point that, number one, he calls them creatures, Aaron the high priest, and number two, it says he was trying to bring them closer to Torah. That obviously means that they were not so close to Torah. They weren't doing everything right, and nevertheless, Aaron loved them. And so, who are we to say today that there are Jews that I shouldn't love? If Aaron could love every Jew, am I better than Aaron? Am I greater than Aaron, the high priest? To say, no, this Jew I love, this Jew I don't love. And secondly, of course, as we said, that even this idea that we're allowed to hate certain people, remember all these conditions, and you'll find very few people that will fall in those conditions. And again, that's proved from Aaron, that Aaron clearly loved every single Jew, and simply to the fact that nobody was up to his level except for Moses. So there was no reason to hate anybody, and he loved every single Jew with unconditional love. I just want to tell you a story where this is expressed in a story in the Talmud. The story in the Talmud goes like this. That the story goes that there was a man called Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir was one of the great sages, and there were people in his neighborhood. Actually, this story belongs later. I'll tell you a different story. There was a story in the Talmud of a rabbi called Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera lived in a neighborhood with many unscrupulous Jews, and he used to pray for them. And when he died, the unscrupulous Jews in the neighborhood said, and this is a story quoted in the Talmud, says, "Who will pray for us now that Rabbi Zera has passed away?" So here you see even a great sage like Rabbi Zera would pray for the sinners in his neighborhood. Okay. Now we're going to get to the next section. Okay, the next section is, the next thing is, we're going to say, not only is there almost nobody that I should hate, this is all to show you just how much we believe in this mitzvah of loving your fellow Jew. This is all chapter 32. Not only do I have a very limited amount of people I'm allowed to hate, even the people that I hate, I am not allowed to hate 100%. So he's qualifying this mitzvah in the Talmud, that even this that it says, you have to hate them and tell your teacher, even when you and your teacher hate this person, you are not hating them 100%. The Alter Rebbe is going to explain that the mitzvah to love and the mitzvah to hate are two separate commandments. And what comes out from this is that you will love the good of the person and you will hate the bad of this person. And I really like this piece because sometimes it is hard to love a Bernie Madoff, but at least this idea can give us some perspective. You love the good, you hate the bad. And you can separate those two things. It's not black and white. You can have both living at the same time, because every single person is really made up of good and bad. And as other people said earlier here, there really isn't anybody who's irredeemable. And so even someone who we are sanctioned to hate, and I'm just going to add that even us, where there are people we hate that we're not sanctioned to hate, we should at least also love them, okay? Now I'm talking to you as a fellow human being who's not at the Tanya's level of loving everybody 100%. Even the people that we hate, and we hate the bad in them, we have to be able to find a way to love the good in them as well. And this we actually see in the Torah. When Jacob was blessing his children at the end of his life, he turned to his son Levi and Simeon, who destroyed an entire city, and he gave them a curse. But if you look at the curse, he wasn't actually cursing them, he was cursing their anger. He says, Arur apam ki az. Cursed is their anger because it is brazen. He didn't curse them, he cursed their anger. And so that's the same thing that we can do as well. We will hate the bad in the person while yet still being able to love the person. There's also another expression of this idea is actually expressed in the Talmud itself. Someone said earlier, what about Pinchas? What about other things? And I said over there, I said, there's a law. Sometimes you have to put people to death, but even when you put them to death, you still love them, to the point that the Talmud says that even somebody who's so wicked that the Beit Din is giving them the capital punishment, it says, Barur lo mitayafeh, try to give them the best death you can possible. And so the Talmud goes into, what does that mean? So it means we try to, if it goes back and forth. Is it better the person wears clothing so that they're not embarrassed? Or is it better they don't wear clothing so they die quicker in the case of stoning? And so the Talmud goes back and forth on that. The Talmud also discusses how we would give the person alcohol before we would put them to death. And the Talmud talks about how the family of the person who's put to death would come visit the witnesses to show that nobody hates each other. It's a law we have to do. And we believe that we have to do this capital punishment in order to allow this person to atone for their sin. But it's actually out of love so that they can atone for their sin. And so these are all examples that though the law is the law, sometimes we still love that person nonetheless. So even in the Torah, when we put people to death, that does not mean that we are hating them. Of course, there is, I think, an idolater, maybe. It might be different, I'm not sure. But anyways, so let us read. Let us read inside. So let's read this inside. This idea that you can both love and hate at the same time. So now he continues, and even in the above case of sinning individuals who are close to you and on par with you in observance, whom you have rebuked, but they have not stopped sinning. So he's saying, even if you find someone who you're sanctioned by the Talmud to hate them, towards whom we learned above it's a mitzvah to show hate to them, that doesn't mean you should just show hate to them, since there's also a mitzvah to love them. It's two mitzvahs. You do one, you do another. there's a discussion on the bottom here. He gives a footnote here that it's actually debated amongst the halachic authorities whether the person that you hate, you're allowed to hate 100% or not. But the Tanya adopts the opinion that says that even someone that you're allowed to hate, you should love. So it's just a footnote, just so you should know there are different halachic opinions, but the Alter Rebbe, not only a writer of Kabbalistic, but also a writer of Jewish law, he wrote a Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law. He holds that you have a mitzvah to love someone even who you are commanded to hate. All right, so now it continues. How is it possible? He says both emotions are valid. Contempt, hatred because of the evil in them, and love because of the component of good that is hidden within them, which is the spark of God within them that energizes their divine souls. Before I go to the next part, so let me explain this a little bit. This is the other story I wanted to tell you. The story goes that Rabbi Meir lived in a neighborhood, and there were some young people in the neighborhood who were wild and party all night, and they would harass Rabbi Meir, the religious Jew in town. And Rabbi Meir couldn't stand these people. And he started to pray that God should take them away. God should kill them, should make them die. So his wife told him, it says, Yitamu chataim velo chotim. It says in I think it's Tehillim, it says that sins should end, not sinners, meaning you should pray for the end of sin. Don't pray for the end of sinners. So if you see someone sinning, don't pray that they should die. Pray that they should stop sinning. You have a choice. Why pray for their death? It's natural because it's natural to hate people in many ways when someone wrongs us. But that's what his wife told him is don't hate. Find a way to pray for them and pray that they stop doing the bad things that they do. Honestly, the outcome is the same. Whether they die or whether they stop sinning, you'll be at peace regardless. So why pray for their death? Pray for them to become better. And I think that's a very healthy perspective. Is we love the good in the people and we pray for them. They should see the error in their ways and become better people. Now he's going to add another element here. So not only is there a possibility to love the good in someone and hate the bad in someone, he's going to say that we can also employ another emotion. So till now we've discussed the emotion of love and the emotion of hatred. Now he's going to discuss the emotion of mercy. The emotion of mercy. So mercy means that not only I'm hating the bad in them and I'm loving the good in them, but actually when I look at those two things, when I see there's that Jewish soul, that potential inside of them, that godly soul, that's stuck in the bad that person is doing, it actually awakens within me a mercy. I feel bad. This person has so much potential. This person has so much they could be. God has given them so much ability. And it's so sad to see that loss. It's so sad to see it's heartbreaking to see the human potential being wasted away. So I start to feel bad for that person and have mercy on them. And so mercy, says the Alter Rebbe, is another way to be able to feel love for someone and compassion for someone who is doing something so wrong. You have compassion knowing they're doing something so wrong, and you know that they can do so much more. This is what the Alter Rebbe calls is mercy can destroy hatred. And this is another important tool to use in our toolbox of loving other people, is that at one step we can sometimes look at people and say, I hate the bad in them, but I know there's a good potential. I can love the good part. Right? Sometimes we say, this person does this stuff bad, but he does some good stuff, like Esau, right? The famous Esau. He was a bad guy in general, but he honored his parents. So I can say, I hate the bad in him, but I love the good in him. Or you could be like Esau's father himself, Isaac. Why did Isaac love Esau? Because he saw the potential in Esau. Now, Esau never lived up to his potential, but he saw the potential in him, and that's why he loved him. We too can kind of push away our hatred of other people by having compassion and feeling bad for people based on what we know they're capable of and unfortunately where they're stuck at. Let's take a look at this inside. He says, and also you ought to arouse compassion in your heart for the person's divine soul, because it is a divine soul exiled amid the evil of the Sitra Achra, which in the case of wicked people overpowers the divine soul, and compassion has the effect of neutralizing contempt and awakening love, as it is known from the verse, to Jacob who redeemed Abraham. So Jacob mystically refers to mercy. Abraham mystically refers to Abraham. And so it says in the verse, Jacob redeems Abraham means through mercy, we can reach love. When, as he says in this paragraph, when you feel sorry for someone who's harmed you, it tends to take away any hatred you might have for them. Compassion ensures that in most cases, contempt will be neutralized and the love will triumph. So we have one more section here, but I cannot stress enough how important that last line is, because again, the Tanya talks to, is telling us what the truth is. And the Tanya is telling us that we should love every single Jew, and there's going to be virtually no Jew that you're allowed to hate. But the reality is that we do hate some people. And so I think these last two lines of the last 2 points of the Tanya, though they technically only apply to someone who you're sanctioned to hate, I think they're also written to talk to us, we're human beings who live on this earth who naturally will hate other people. And he gives us 2 tools. Number one is love the good in them. You can see the bad, you hate the bad parts of them, but also recognize the good that's in them. And number 2, even deeper, is if we can get there, is have a little bit of mercy on that person. Feel bad for that person. If you can feel bad for that person, you feel bad. Oh my gosh, that person has so much potential. They're just stuck in this negative cycle. They're captured by their inner demons. They're having trouble reaching their potential. I feel bad for them. Yes, Nina.
And they're with their animal soul, yeah.
Yeah, demons, I mean animal soul. For a Tanya class. If I'm talking not to a Tanya class, you'll know what I mean. I'll have to specify. But I assume everybody here knows what I mean. Obviously, we don't, demons, whatever. It's just a language that people use. But yes, they're captured by their animal soul, their evil inclination. And by the way, it's not that that our sages don't ever use the word demon. It's just we don't mean it in the same way that necessarily other religions mean it. So we do use that word. So I think this is a very healthy perspective, and I've employed it in my own life as well. Because we deal with people. I understand. So we deal with people, and people can be very difficult sometimes. And really, the way I feel, the easiest way for me to work through it, it's nice to tell myself, I should love every person. But I find the easiest way to work through it personally is this last point that he says here. The easiest way that I personally work through it, not always do I. Sometimes we don't want to let go. But the easiest way to work through it is to feel compassion for that person, to feel bad for them. Maybe they were raised a certain way and they have a low self-esteem, and there's reasons why they're doing what they do, and it has a lot of times nothing to do with you. They might be picking on you because it makes them feel better. So it's not so much that they hate you, or even if they think they hate you, they don't really hate you. It's a way of covering over their own personal issues. And so when I look at people, I say, oh, I can see their inner child. I can see they're just really a child who's never grown up. Maybe their parents treated them in some way they never felt loved. You can see this in a lot of people. You can feel compassion. And so even though they're annoying you and bugging you and hating you and doing lots of terrible things to you, you can sometimes, at least, even if you're not going to be friends with them, which again, there's no mitzvah to put yourself in harm's way, but you can feel bad for them and pray for them. It's a little harder when people steal from you. I have to say, it's another story. So I'm just going to leave it at that. We're going to end up with the last point here. The last point is the last text the Alter Rebbe is going to have to grapple with, and this is another difficult one, is a statement from King David. King David says, let's take a look here in the text. King David says, but when King David of blessed memory said, with other hatred do I hate them. So you're going to read the book of Psalms. You're going to read chapter 139, verse 22. And King David says, with utter hatred do I hate them. This does not sound like anything that Tanya has said till now, even if we were to explain what the Tanya said earlier, that there are some people you're allowed to hate, but utter hatred, how could that be? Didn't we just say back and forth you have to love the good, hate the bad. Where does utter hatred come from? So the Alter Rebbe explains he was referring only to the extreme case of highly educated heretics and non-believers that pose a threat to traditional Judaism, which she'ein lahem, who have shed any manifest connection to Judaism and so have no portion of the God of Israel, as is stated in the Talmud Tractate Shabbos, beginning of chapter 16, 116a. So we're referring to people here that are educated, very well versed, very spiritual, and not only are they doing bad things themselves, they are leading other people astray. Like the famous Yeravam ben Nevat, the first king of the kingdom of Israel, where he led an entire 10 tribes away from God, bringing idolatry, and to the point where he was told that he has no portion in the world to come, even though most people have a portion in the world to come. He had no portion in the world to come. So there are extreme examples of people who are not only who are well educated, well learned, know what's right, know very well what's right, and are leading other people astray. Such a person, possibly, it is possible to hate them 100%. Now, I'm going to add one thing here, which the Rebbe adds, is that, and that's what this note here below here is. So this note comes from the Rebbe's explanation. The Tanya stresses this hatred is something which King David said, because it is not something you should be practicing. When expressing righteous indignation for another person's actions, even though you appear to be taking the moral high ground, how do you know you're not acting out of impure motive? You also may have erred in judgment about your friend's heresy, which may in fact be nothing more than a benign short-sightedness. If you act with contempt towards another person and you're wrong in your judgment, you have hurt someone unjustifiably, but if you behave lovingly towards everyone, you are definitely doing a mitzvah. So what he's saying here, that King David, the spiritual person that he was, again, the Chabad view is that King David was a very high spiritual person. He had the ability to see the people that we can utterly hate. But for people like our level, even if it seems to us that somebody we should hate, someone who's anti-Israel and seems to be leading other people astray, sure, I have to hate what they do and I have to stop what they're doing. But am I sanctioned to hate them? No, not necessarily. And in fact, I'll bring you stories of the Rebbe. Number one, Shimon Peres. Shimon Peres was one of the big proponents of land for peace, which the Rebbe believed was always a catastrophe. The Rebbe believed land for peace was a terrible idea, would bring about a calamity for the Jewish people. And unfortunately, as we saw with Gush Katif, the Chabad is apolitical. Chabad does not get involved in politics. There's only one time Chabad got involved in politics. That was in 1990. In 1990, Shimon Peres was running to be the prime minister. And the Rebbe actually got involved and told all the Chabadniks to make a campaign in Israel to vote against his party, because he was saying clearly he was going to give away land. And so one might think that the Rebbe hated Shimon Peres to the point where he was willing to get involved in politics. But the Rebbe sent a message to Shimon Peres. He said, I have nothing against you. I hate what you stand for. I hate the opinion, but I have nothing against you. And there are so many stories like that. When the Rebbe would rail against certain things people were doing, there was always another message that would come out from the Rebbe and say that I don't hate you. I hate what you're saying. In fact, there's a story. There was a writer. There's a story I think I showed here once. There was a writer in the Allgemeiner Journal. Allgemeiner was a newspaper in Yiddish that was printed in New York, and the Rebbe wanted it to have broad opinions in there. And there was one writer in there that used to rail against Israel. And the Rebbe, he one time came to the Rebbe towards the end of his life, and the Rebbe told him, I read your column. And see, the guy was like taken aback, like he thought the Rebbe would scream at him. The Rebbe told him, I read your column. And the Rebbe told him, just remember when you write articles, you know who's going to be reading the articles, and think about the effect of your words. But it's interesting, the Rebbe, I don't know if you want to say the Rebbe believed in free press, but the Rebbe definitely believed in this idea that you have to see different perspectives. You don't just shout down other perspectives. Though the Rebbe would rail against bad perspectives, he wanted that the newspaper should contain different perspectives. It was very interesting, probably a discussion for another time. My point, though, in this story was that though the Rebbe had very strong opinions about Israel and what things would lead to catastrophes, he never hated the person who was pushing these ideals. He showed them love, even though he would rail against what they would say. We all show these people love. And so that's the end of this chapter. There's never really a reason, unless you're King David, there's really nobody you can hate. And I think hopefully you appreciate from today's Tanya that the Tanya believes in unconditional love. If through our love to another person and an expression of our love, we can bring them closer to Torah, sure, we really want to do that. But even if not, we love every person and every Jew nonetheless, by virtue of their divine and godly spark. And if there's someone that truly needs to be hated, we hate the bad in them, we love the good in them, and finally, we feel care and compassion for other people to be able to love people who may seem bad. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you've been inspired, and we'll continue next time with chapter 33. We have finished the chapter of love.
Thank you.